Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook live broadcast. I'm Steve Altition, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Legal, and I'm here today with attorney Zach Santos to talk about what goes into a good parenting plan and why it's so darn important you have one. So, Zach, how you doing today?
Doing well, Steve. Had a late night flying back in from the East Coast, hanging out with my parents, but feeling good and excited to join you and everyone here today.
I like it. There's nothing better than eh, my brain's not working.
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline rush. So,
Right.
Zach, before we get started on details of what goes into a good parenting plan, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I am working on year 4 as an attorney in family law. I worked in family law and juvenile law, which is a close cousin, for a couple of years throughout law school. And for better or worse, I decided that this is the career path that I wanted to get on for the stage of my life. I kind of approached it from more religious reasons. I felt like this is where God wanted me to be, to serve His people, going through the toughest times in life, and structuring very crazy, critical things like parenting plans. And so I just felt like there's a lot of purpose there, and been diving in and mostly enjoying it for the past 4 or so years. And we'll see how it goes. And I just love working with regular people, love helping them work out these kind of very intricate issues and problems, and it's really what drives me every day.
Oh, that's really cool, actually.
Mhm.
So let's before we talk about what actually goes into the darn plan, talk about why it's so important to have a good, thorough parenting plan.
Right. So the reason why you want to have it is so that for you and your kiddos, that you need stability, you need certainty, you need to know what's gonna, you need to do your best to anticipate issues that might arise, X, Y, Z. What are we gonna do when there's a communication issue? What are we gonna do when what's going on in the summer? What are we gonna do with exchanges? You need to be able to anticipate as much as you possibly can. No one can anticipate every single issue that might arise over 18 years, but the more you can be specific and reasonable and iron out these kind of very critical details in a parenting plan, the less need for drama and huge, expensive litigation disputes where if two parents disagree, then maybe one will hail them back to court to try to modify a very general ambiguous parenting plan, and then you spend potentially your life savings that could be earmarked towards your kids, taking care of them, just battling it out. And nobody wins just about
Yeah.
all the time in family law. So it's kind of like it's a measure to ensure that there's just certainty moving forward, and amicability between the parents, and,
Yeah.
uh, and hopefully something that really works for everyone.
Well, that makes complete sense.
Mhm.
Are parenting plans required?
Yes, they are required when there's a child at play, and the specific statute that kind of addresses it, which is something that I encourage everyone here to bookmark and review, which is ORS 107.102. What it basically states is that in every case involving kids, there needs to be some form of parenting plan. It doesn't need to be super specific like the ones that I like to tailor for my clients, but it can be general, and at a bare minimum, it needs to address how much time each parent is going to have with the kids, um, when exchanges will be, and just enough to be able to basically put a band-aid on things. And the hope, it's pretty aspirational, but the hope is that parents can kind of iron things out on their own. Sometimes, when in divorce, there's a reason why they divorce, hence the need for specific plans. But yes, to answer the question more directly, yes, these kinds of things are mandated.
Okay. So let's now move to some of the details that go into a well thought out, parenting plan that's going to work now and in the future. I know one of the first things you talked about that needs to kind of be addressed is sort of the decision-making authority and responsibilities of each parent.
Right. So the decision making, that's the kind of legalese term that you kind of hear often on TV. Certainly is custody, and I think that's we're not going to go too deep into how custody is determined and all that. That's a whole separate webinar. But the main concept I want you to take away is that there's a difference between parenting plan and custody. Parenting time and custody. Parenting time to me is the most important possible thing. It's the literal amount of time you are going to have with your child or children. It's in custody is decision making. Who's going to make the big sweeping decisions for the kids? Now, day-to-day decisions, who's going to take them to soccer practice, who's going to make food for them, just regular decisions. That's the parent who has the kid for that specific day. But when it comes to major decisions, that's custody. And that kind of falls into three, what I call buckets. Non-emergency healthcare. I say non-emergency because emergency healthcare, either parent can make those decisions, and there's a specific statute that authorizes that. I think it's ORS 107.154. So non-emergency healthcare, so vaccines, surgeries that can be scheduled out a couple weeks. Who's going to be the primary care provider? Who's going to be the therapist? Things like this. Who's gonna facilitate beta blockers for anxiety medications, something like that. Non-emergency healthcare. That's the big one. Another one is education. Who's going to determine? Are they going to go to homeschool? Are they going to go to private school? Whose home is going to be a zone for public school districting purposes? Education. And the last one is religion. So both parents can facilitate religious indoctrination under the Constitution, but the custodial parent can determine who's going to be like the primary indoctrinator, like where they're going to be members of a synagogue or a church or facilitate baptism, something like that. That's
and
custody.
This kind of level of detail on custody, which you don't normally see a lot. You'll see, okay, wife has custody. Done. Let's move on. It feels like what you're doing here is you're making it more thorough, so there aren't these weird questions that come up a year later.
Certainly, because not everyone are weirdos like me who go to law school for 3 years and then dive into this every single day. The people who are zoning in or tuning into this are normal. That's what I like to call them, like Muggles in Harry Potter. They don't know these kind of legalese terms about custody. Maybe they have done research, maybe not. So the best thing to do is to spell out who's going to make these decisions. And I might be in the minority on this, but I take the approach that if both parents are good good is subjective, but just stable parents who really do their best to put their kids' interests at heart and are there for them, aren't absent or not absent, then I think a joint custodial framework might be best for them. And I do have a couple examples that I'm willing to share with everyone here about how you can kind of capture that, because as you mentioned, Steve, and you see these kind of parenting plans, it says, for instance, mother is sole custodial parent. Well, what the heck does that mean? Or if it says joint custody, what does that mean in practice when you butt heads? And how these kind of barriers going to be resolved? So, yeah.
You want to give us an example?
Yeah. So one that I've found that has worked, and I've actually, off the record, I had a couple of judges pull me and another attorney aside and then just rain down praise about how we were able to figure these things out, because sometimes it is good for both parents to have what I call a seat at the table. And how that can happen is, so you start with the framework of joint custody. Both parents the term is confer and consult. They have to confer and consult with each other about major decisions for the children. And then, but if there's a dispute over what should happen, like mom says X, well, dad says Y, well, then you build in these things called tiebreakers. So remember what I mentioned about the 3 buckets: non-emergency healthcare, education, religion. Well, maybe, for instance, mother can have final say over non-emergency healthcare if father, after conferring in good faith, that they can't come to a resolution. And maybe dad has final say over education, and maybe his home is the one that's zoned for school districting purposes. Maybe they equally share religion and religious indoctrination, or maybe it's not even that important to them. So that's one way to do it. You can even take it a step further and split up something like, remember I said non-emergency healthcare. There's like primary care, like what the physical care for the child, but then there might be a mental health care concept about or diet prescriptions that specifically are to address mental health diagnoses. Maybe dad has final say over mental health care. Maybe mom has final say over physical care. And maybe if they don't agree upon educational decisions, maybe they go to someone who's trusted within the family, someone who might be a teacher or administrator or the principal of the school. You can get very creative with these kinds of things. Or a tiebreaker could be that if you don't agree on healthcare, you go to the child's primary care provider and they weigh in, or the mental health care provider. Yeah, you can get very creative.
I have talked with many mental health providers who wish that clause would be in, who absolutely wish that clause would be in. And it gets the right person making the decision, and you're not having to go to court all the time. So that's just a great example of why having something like that in your parenting time or your parenting plan is necessary. You use the term parenting time, which I just said. Let's talk about that. I know you like to also be pretty specific about parenting time, because again, that's where a lot of the fight comes in.
Right. If you're going to get general on it, I'll give a quick example about how you can go general, but still get specific where it needs to be. One way to be general is, well, both parents, for instance, are going to agree to have equal parenting time, but maybe they have fluctuating schedules. Maybe one is a nurse, maybe the kids are all over the place with sports or something. So maybe they'll have equal parenting time and informally figure out how that looks. But if they can't come to a resolution, then there'll be like a default plan every other week, parenting time, maybe 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. or from school drop off to school drop off on Fridays. You start at Fridays. I've found to be a very good day. And you start your parenting time over the weekend. So that's an example of where you can do it for general time. But the concept, be as specific as possible. You don't want to go so specific that you're kind of getting a little too engrossed in the day-to-day decisions of the other parents, such as they gotta have steak and eggs for breakfast every day. You can't get to that specific, but you definitely want to delineate when exchanges will be, when the regular time, which we call regular time, holiday time, summertime. You want to state when the summer schedule starts and who gets certain blocks of time, who's going to have certain what are the days and the exchange times in the holidays. You want to get as specific as possible so you don't have to leave it up to a court or don't have to leave it up to media. You have enough headaches on your mind. You don't need to invite more by being lackadaisical over something so important.
Yeah, and like you said, holidays, again, when it's just, husband gets every other Halloween, can be an issue because certain holidays have certain kind of events that happen with them that you need to kind of note. And I saw when I was looking on your plans that you do that. I mean, you break down all the holidays.
Right. Yeah. And what you're referencing is over the years, I've developed a pretty good template parenting plan. It's about 9 pages long. I mean, it's everyone's families are unique. Everything needs to be narrowly tailored to what's going on. But a good general framework that I work off of is this one particular template plan. And yeah, it lists just about every holiday: Independence Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, Easter, Halloween, you name it. What gets tricky is when you have to incorporate in the more kind of fluctuating dates, such as there's certain Jewish holidays, Hanukkah and some others. So yeah, if you can address all that in there, and typically with holidays, it's one parent has even years of, like, let's say for over Christmas break, they have from when school gets out until the day after Christmas. And then the other parent has from the day after Christmas until school starts. And then next year it switches. Same thing for Thanksgiving, same thing for spring break. One parent has spring break, then the parent has spring break. It's to promote fairness and equity to ensure that both parents have these kind of intimate times, because the day-to-day, that's where families are developed and values are developed, but it is nice to have these intimate times to take off and go on vacation with your kids.
Yeah. What happens if a holiday falls on the other person's, let's say, weekend?
Right. So that's a very good question. So you start, remember I mentioned you start with the residential schedule, and let's say it's every week on, week off.
Right.
Well, after that, there's like this system of trumping. It's like in sports cards or trading playing cards. Like something trumps the other. So with this, if a holiday, like let's say 4th of July weekend, that we just had, that falls on dad's regular time. Well, if mom has a 4th of July weekend this year, that trumps the residential schedule. So dad won't have week time that weekend, and he's not entitled to make up time. This is just how it goes. Holiday time trumps regular time, and depending on the schedule, my schedule, holiday time trumps summertime schedules, and we can transition to that after this if you'd like. But yes, it's must be clear that, because if a parent was like, well, no, this is my weekend, well, this is my 4th of July. No, holidays, and this is how judges will interpret it. It's not just the best way to approach it. Yeah.
Again, being specific, everybody knows and everybody can schedule, and
Right.
it's great. Can a plan for parenting time change as the kids get older? Is that something you try to build into a parenting plan?
Yeah, I certainly do, and that's where things can kind of get tricky, and you want to ensure that you have an experienced attorney that can help walk you through it if you do go through an attorney route. And if you don't have an attorney route, just do your very best and understand that, well, hopefully that the other parent, you two are, maybe you're not best friends, but you understand that you are on the same side, that you are co-parents and seeking the best interest of your child. So you're going to do your best to anticipate or to address these issues as they arise. But yeah, there's with my plan, sometimes I call them phases. With one phase is, like, let's say you have an infant child, and then separate households. Infants, just about all the time, unless there's a serious issue with the mother, the infants will say go with the mother, because they need the nutrients and breastfeeding. There's so much that goes into it. The infants need to be with primary caregivers and with no overnights for the other parent. And there's I don't profess to be a scientist, but there's a good amount of research out there that shows that the kids, babies until 12 to 18 or so months, they don't really know what time is. They just know abandonment if the primary caregiver is gone. So you kind of build in that phase where mom has vast majority of time, but dad has blocks of time. He has consistent exposure, and the child knows his face and the child knows him. And then once you get to the second phase, which is about 18 or so months, then dad has maybe 2 or 3 overnights. You kind of ease it in. This is assuming that both parents are great parents. There's no safety concerns, which we'll later address. But if both parents are just totally fine, then most courts will eventually order equal parenting time. So then it'll ramp up to second. Phase 2 will be kind of a couple overnights every week, and then phase 3 will be maybe closer to, or when they're in grade school. When they're in grade school, you want stability. You don't want a ton of exchanges back and forth, because they're trying to do their homework. They're trying to hang out with friends. They're trying to do sports. Week on, week off is typically pretty good. Maybe in the weeks where the parent doesn't have the kid, maybe they have an evening dinner, so that they don't have to go a whole week without seeing their son or daughter, or etc. So yeah.
That's tremendous. It's and those are in the parenting plan. This is something that they're having to figure out on the fly when it happens.
I mean, most of the plans that I see that come to me, if I'm seeking to modify a plan, they have not anticipated these kinds of things.
Right.
But yes, with my plans, they do. And something that is interesting that I try to do when kids when they start to get closer to teen years, when they're a little bit more privy to what they want, and I'm sorry, which parent that they feel most comfortable with, and maybe they'll have some say into, hey, maybe I want to spend a little bit more time with dad this week, or maybe I want to spend a little more time with mom. So then maybe there'll be language about both parents will, once they get to a certain age, that both parents will consider the wants and suggestions of the kids. Something that absolutely must be clear, and no judge will ever order this specific thing, which is that kids cannot dictate parenting plans. A judge will never allow that. Parents should never allow that.
Right.
Kids, when you feel they're good and ready, can weigh in when they're mature, but kids don't run the show, parents run the show, but they do. It's best to kind of incorporate what the kids want.
Another thing I saw in your plan is some pretty detailed information on sharing information with each other. Because again, that's one that sometimes uh, maybe a few years into the past divorce starts to come up. Uh, how do you put that in your parenting plan, and why is that important?
Right. So one of the most important concepts is to understand is that ORS 107.154 and ORS 107.164 mandate that parents need to share these kinds of information and documents back and forth. Just because, let's say, you're the custodial parent and there's no joint custodial arrangement, you're the custodial parent, doesn't mean that only you can look at these kind of documents, only you can talk to their providers. No, even a non-custodial parent has a right to all governmental documents for the kids, their educational records, to speak with their medical providers, obtain their records, and even to apply to be a guardian ad litem, something like this. It's both parents have these rights, and they need to be able to exchange legal documents for the kids, like their passports, their social security documents, discuss any kind of emergency situations that may arise. That's absolutely imperative. You need to talk about issues that may arise with the kids' health, what's going on with their home residence. Like, let's say a parent moves to a different apartment or something, you need to know where the kid's living, and what's going on with their educational records. There just needs to be this back and flow, and you can't just say, well, they can go off and get it. Well, sort of, but no, they're entitled to these kinds of rights. And again, refer to 107, 101 ORS 107.154 and ORS 107.164 for further detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I build these into my plans too, so that they don't have to go do that research. It's right there for them.
Yeah. Right. Oh, exactly. It's a lot of times they say, the devil's in the details, and the details, if you don't have them down, can cause more problems than the big ticket stuff. But you
Absolutely.
did talk about moving, and it made me think about, what if a parent is going to move out of state, or from Medford to Portland? Is there anything about that in a parenting plan?
Yeah, so typically what the bare minimum that you need to put in is just capturing another rule. It's ORS, which one is it? ORS 107.159 and ORS 107.164. I just state this now in case people want to go refer to that later. That if they're going to move more than 60 miles radius from the other parent, they need to provide both the court and the other parent written notice at least 45 days in advance of their intent to do so, and provide updated contact information and residence information. But that doesn't mean that, like, let's say it's, let's say, keep going back to this week on, week off schedule. That doesn't mean that just because you're moving, you can withhold the child from the other parent. You still need to facilitate all that other child's parenting time. But if you're going to move to somewhere like, let's say, California or Washington, it's going to be very hard to do this. So that's when you need to go back to the court and try, or to mediation. Prefer to keep things out of court, file a motion to modify the judgment if needed, and then ask for a different parenting plan. It's because I do not encourage people to make an entire new schedule, say, hey, if I were to move to Idaho, this is what's happening. There's just too many variables there.
Yeah.
But bare minimum, there needs to be notice of the intent to move, and do your best to try to work that out. Because if you go to court on the matter, it's going to be expensive and it's hard to win. It's best to settle.
Is there anything in parenting plan, or should they be, about because again, this is an area that comes up, is how much a child can talk to their non-custodial parent, or the parent they're not with. Can they give them a call? And also communication between parents. Just, can you, if a parent you think is like stalking you, I mean, are there things you can put in a parenting plan that talk about that kind of communication?
Yeah, we'll deal with the child communication first. So courts, and this is assuming no safety concerns, courts want to ensure that parents aren't ostracized from the other parents. So even if a child is with one parent during their set time, parent the default is generally that the other parent can reach out to the child and contact them, whether if they have a phone, call their phone, text their phone, or contact the other parent and ask them to share your phone. They contact at reasonable times. They can't just pepper them with calls and take up the other parent's entire time. Everything needs to be reasonable. You always need to approach these things with reasonability. But yes, you can't, unless you agree otherwise, you'll be able to talk to your child. The bigger issue is communication with that other parent, because sometimes there have been some serious emotional abuse. See that pretty frequently, and sometimes physical abuse. It's very hard, but if there's no restraining order, there needs to be at least some kind of communication about exchanges and maybe changes to the parenting time. If there's an issue that comes up, or unavoidable delays, something like that. So you build in language about they can only talk about issues related to the kids, only emergencies related to the kids, only the kids. And if it ever deviates, then that's cause for something like filing for contempt, holding the court, holding them in file a motion, specific motion in a separate court case, holding them in contempt. And that can affect parenting time in custody too. If a parent is just, you know what, screw you, violating the parenting time and parenting plan, I'm going to talk to you however way I want, regardless of this court order. No, that's not how it works.
Right. And that kind of creeps into involvement in the kids' activities, daycare, even kind of how the children, what they need to do for exchanges, that whole kind of situation. And you have stuff for that in your parenting plan too, don't you?
Yes, I do. I have language about you can't intentionally schedule activities for the kids or you with the kids during the other parent's parenting time without their permission. So like, let's say they have regular baseball practice and you want to sign them up for Little League. So you can sign them up for Little League, but you need to get the other parent's permission, because that parent might lose time with the kids, and you can't just unilaterally determine what's gonna happen with the kids. Even if you're the custodial parent, you can't take up the other parent's parenting time without their permission. So I include language about that. I include language about who's going to look after the child with child care. So like something that's I have in there is that most parents don't feel the most comfortable when the babysitters are under the age of something around 15 or so that the parent, there won't be babysitters of that younger than that. And whenever there is a babysitter, you'll provide the other parent their contact information, name, and so just to ensure that everyone's on the same page about who's looking after their child, because both parents deserve to know who's looking for their child. I include language about extracurricular activities, which we kind of lightly touched on, but expense sharing. So if both parents want to agree that, let's say karate, that it's best to enroll them in karate. If they both agree that that's fine to enroll them in, then they both equally share the responsibilities. But if only one parent wants them to put them in tennis, the other parent's like, no, I want to put them in ballet or something. Well, one parent can put them in tennis, one parent can put them in ballet, but the parent that enrolls them in tennis covers all those expenses. Parent enrolls them in ballet covers all those expenses if only one parent wants to do it. That's what I incorporate into the plan to ensure that there's no surprises and no kind of jerk moves.
Yeah, and again, people know if I'm going to do this, I'm going to pay for it. If we decide, we're both going to pay, and it just creates so much less friction down the road. Mm-hmm. But can you do something about it in a parenting plan, ensuring safety? And I know, obviously physical abuse, that's almost another issue, but what if, what about things like firearms or even the disciplinary practices,
Yeah.
and druggies who come visit.
Right. Yeah, I'll do my best to be efficient on these things, but yeah, this is something that I can maybe touch on in another Facebook
Yep,
Live too, but
absolutely.
just to kind of gloss over some of these things. Corporal punishment is something that's kind of an iffy topic, especially nowadays. So I usually include language that it's fine so long as both parents agree. Both parents need to agree in writing that that's fine. I include language about firearms, that it's fine to safely and responsibly have firearms in your home, but during your parenting time, they need to be securely stored in a way, and absolutely no way for the kids to access them. We do not want a tragedy in our hands, and there needs to be very specific language about that. Sometimes one parent or both have alcohol dependency issues, so I include language. It's pretty strict language, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do to protect the kids, to ensure that maybe your demons don't come back up. So I include language, again, depending on circumstances, but language that says no parent can drink, or at least one parent can't drink during their parenting time with the child. It's just point blank. It's not, you can't have a blood alcohol level over the legal limit, because it's hard to judge that. So it's just, no, you can't drink, and you're always going to be stable. You can take your medications if they're prescribed by a doctor and used as directed. I include language about that. Include language about if anyone who's going to drive the children needs to be properly licensed, and the vehicle needs to be insured. These are all the kind of things that just need to be anticipated. And just a quick note on abuse. I include a good paragraph of language about if a child is exposed to any form of physical abuse, whether it's taking it or visually seeing, slapping, hitting, or something like that, then you can file a request for a hearing specifically based off of that provision. So you don't have to file contempt, which can take a month or more. You just file a request for a hearing based off of this rule. And you ask the judge to first of all, you file the request for the hearing, you schedule the hearing, and then you ask the court, say, hey, this is what I know about this situation. He's exposed to this, or hey, I know that this person was drinking. They agreed not to drink, or something like this. And then you say, Your Honor, this is my evidence. Please. Then you make your request. Please suspend his parenting time. Please make it what's it called, supervised parenting time. Something like that. And the courts in Oregon have a wide swath of authority to do what they want, what they believe is in the best interest of the child, and to promote equity.
Yep. Wow. Again, time flies. We are running out of time. We definitely would love to do this again and talk about maybe even just some of these specific issues and issues on, resolving disputes, amending the plans. I mean, you talked about them and how you can do them, but again, and I'd like to kind of just talk about this before we go. Every parenting plan is going to be different because everybody's situation is different.
Absolutely, and that's absolutely imperative. There's no cookie cutter resolution. Like even the template plan that I mentioned before, it's just something that I've developed and taken pieces from different, very specific cases throughout my life, and you're just trying to anticipate issues. That's what you're trying to do your best. Can't cover everything, but you take your plan and you tailor it to what's going on with your specific needs, with what's going on with your child or children, what's going on with you, what's going on with the other partner. Consider safety concerns that you want to build into the plan. And I want to reiterate it one more time. Write down ORS 107.102. Make sure your plans contemplate at a bare minimum what's listed in subsection 3 and subsection 4. And what they list out is much like what we discussed: residential schedule, holidays, relocation of parents, telephone access. These kind of important things it's almost like a checklist. At bare minimum, right. You need to have these in your plans.
Right. And for any particular situation that we haven't even talked about that's unique, you can make a provision for that would cover it in a parenting plan.
Yeah, that's the beauty of settlement. You can get creative, and it's. I like it. You go to trial if you need to. If both parents can't figure things out between themselves, you need to put it before a judge. And fortunately, where I live here in Deschutes County, judges are fabulous, and most judges throughout Oregon are very good. So you can put it before them, but you're putting the fate of something so precious in the hands of someone who knows nothing about you.
Right.
So sometimes it's best to get creative and find resolutions in settlement if you truly believe it's in the best interests of your kids.
Yeah, and parenting plans actually help judges to know more about you. The more detailed they are, you
Right?
get where you're coming from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, we are out of time. That's unfortunate. So, Zach, again, bringing your depth of knowledge and really, matter of fact, clearness to talking about this, you made really complex legal and situational issues understandable. So, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. So love to work with people who are watching. If they need help in the future, feel free to reach out, retain me, and we can do our best to work for you moving forward.
Exactly. And thank you everyone for joining us today. As Zach said, anyone can post a question. We can get you in touch with Zach. And as after that, if you need to work with him, he can work with you. So as for now, as I always say, until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and be well.